bit to write, and it's been a fun process. The story is written by myself, Mark Zaleski, and Mel Orpin, and the show itself was written by Mel, and it's a wonderful piece about Typhoid Mary. So, as we start, I'd like to introduce you to the characters. First of all, we have the beautiful and elegant Lila Vanderveller. Lila is a 50s to 60s strong female who is no stranger to beauty. Lila is a wealthy, upper-class, old-money New York society wife who runs her household and her husband. Her desire for power is matched only by her ruthlessness and pursuit of it. She is kind when it suits her purposes, but there is always a motive behind it. She wants nothing less to be the most powerful woman in New York society. Please welcome Lila Vanderveller. George Soper is a 40s male engineer and scientist, an opportunist with no small amount of luck. He has pushed his way to the front of his profession. Soper takes a bit in the teeth and runs with it. He focuses on the facts as they benefit him and not the feelings. His goal is to become the most celebrated scientific mind of his time by writing a book about the infamous typhoid fever and its healthy carrier, Mary Mallon, aka Typhoid Mary. Please welcome George Soper. Siobhan, a late teens, early 20s, is an Irish lady's household maid. Siobhan knows what Lila expects and gives it to her, always with the appearance of respect, but generally doesn't take Lila more seriously than appearances require. A young lady not yet wounded by the world. Welcome, Siobhan. William Brannigan, a mid to late 20s male with good posture, proper bearing, befitting the statute of a footman to a wealthy New York society household. Hey. All right.
And also, this play will involve a lot of music from the time, mainly opera excerpts. So I'm going to play one for you that I think kind of symbolizes the feelings of Mary Mallon. She kind of was trying to live the American dream. She moved here from Ireland, and suddenly she's told that she's, this healthy carrier. She's isolated for the rest of her life off of Manhattan. So I picked Un bel di vedremo from Madame Butterfly to represent this, that it's just, Madame Butterfly was this hopeless romantic who thought her love would come and save her, but he never did. And she lost out. She missed out on her whole life because of that. So we're just going to play it once to the sound person up there. Extra, extra. Halley's Comet fever sweeps New York City. The rich throw parties while the poor watch the skies with fear. Get the Evening Journal here, just a penny a paper.
Evening, Kenny. Electricity replaces gas lamp across the city. Crime down by 40%. The New York World gives you news you can use for just 1 cent.
Evening, Jim. Did you see the circulation figures last week? Before you know it, you'll be asking me for a job. New York population tops 4.7 million as waves of immigration continue.
Write me when that happens. We're already over 1 million. That means 1 in 4 New Yorkers reads our paper. New York establishes first permanent board of health in America. New department guidelines lower child mortality rate.
You could pay 1 cent to read it on the front page just like everybody else.
Epidemic averted. New York Board of Health refuses entry of cholera-infected ship from Philadelphia.
What a bore. New York elite gather for the Metropolitan Opera annual gala. Mrs. Vanderbilt to donate remaining caviar to nearby soup kitchen.
You call that news? I'll show you news. Exclusive! U.S. government makes fraudulent payment to Panama Canal Company to the tune of $40 million.
Joseph Pulitzer, founder of the World newspaper, sued for libel by President Roosevelt and J.P. Morgan.
Supreme Court dismisses libel case against the World and its founder.
Try this on for size. Typhoid fever discovered in Oyster Bay. Family's cook suspected.
German scientist discovers bacteria causes disease. First healthy carrier of typhoid fever detected in New York by laboratory testing.
Huh. Mary Mallon identified as culprit in Oyster Bay outbreak. Flees as 6 members of the household succumb to typhoid.
Mary Mallon claims slander. I am not sick.
Department of Health sentences Typhoid Mary to isolation on Brother Island.
Lawyer to appeal Mallon's quarantine and isolation. Independent laboratory testing shows my client is not a healthy carrier.
Typhoid Mary given parole by new health commissioner. Promises never to cook again.
Mary Mallon vindicated, but disappears from sight.
Henry Ford makes his 10,000th car.
The phonograph brings recorded music to the masses.
New York's elite of the elite are dubbed Mrs. Astor's 400.
25 nurses sick, 2 dead at Sloan Hospital for Women. Typhoid rears its ugly head again.
Same time tomorrow?
Sure. See you, Kenny.
See you, Jim.
We open in a high society parlor room, decorated in Art Nouveau style. It is 1910 New York. There is a sofa and 2 matching armchairs surrounding a tea table. Stage right rear, a closed door, access to the servants' area. The clock chimes 3:30. Lila Vanderveller sits on her sofa reviewing a menu for the upcoming Halley's Comet-themed dinner party. Lila is a well-dressed, mature woman who commands the room with her presence. She puts down a menu on the tea table in front of her and finishes writing a note, enclosing it in its envelope, smiling as she seals it. She sets it on a silver mail tray that rests nearby. From it, she takes an envelope addressed to her and removes a small folded personal note. As she reads it, her face darkens. She reaches out and rings a bell.
Bring me William, immediately. Yes, you may leave. William, Mrs. Whitney's maid has had quite a bit to say about your conduct during their most recent visit.
Conduct? If you mean Mr. Samuels, he was simply...
No explanations will be necessary. I've already spoken to Mr. Samuels. He's extremely distressed about your behavior, as am I. You're dismissed. You will go upstairs, change, and come back once you've packed up all your things. See me here before you take your leave. You will be gone within the hour.
My behavior?
That will be all. So, tell Mrs. Carroll to move the escargot to the second course and the pommes frites to the first. Otherwise, it's fine.
Yes, Mrs. Is young William well?
As we are seeing Caruso at the Metropolitan Opera tonight, I will need you to keep your mind on your duties, Siobhan.
I've set out the indigo satin for you. Do you prefer the ivory brooch and pearl earrings or the jade brooch and tourmaline earrings this evening, Mrs.?
I think the jade and tourmaline will be best. We'll be sitting in the Vanderbilt's box again. Mrs. Vanderbilt always wears pearls, depriving everyone else of the opportunity. That woman, she would prevent the sun from shining if she could replace it with herself.
I think the jade goes better with your dress anyway, Mrs. And you will have a wonderful evening, don't you think?
Not really. Mrs. Vanderbilt requires us to listen to her very tedious story about how she acquired the pearls in Japan every time we visit together, how she visited the oyster beds herself, how she haggled over their price. Disgusting woman. But, as Mrs. Astor was fond of saying, they've become too rich to ignore.
Did you know Mrs. Astor well, Mrs.?
She was before your time, wasn't she? Well, yes, we wrote to each other once a month.
That will be the afternoon cart. Shall I go and fetch William, Mrs.?
No, Mr. Brannigan has decided to leave service. He is to go and care for his ailing grandfather who needs him quite urgently.
Oh, how terrible.
Go and see if Mrs. Carroll needs any help with the afternoon cart. She will no longer have Mr. Brannigan to assist her.
Will we be getting a new footman?
Manners, Siobhan. You will address me as Madam or Mrs., and I will be the one asking the questions. Is that perfectly clear?
Yes, Mrs. Sorry, Mrs.
That's better. Yes, since the staff is so sure to gossip, I will tell you that it's hard to find good help with no notice. I will need to make inquiries. Now, go and see to the tea shop. It's nearly time for our guest. Oh, and Siobhan, remind Mrs. Carroll that dinner must be ready by 5 o'clock or we will be quite late. You will dress me as usual, and Mr. Vandervelde will be back at 6:30. Please remind Mr. Samuels of this.
Of course, Mrs. I will be sure that he sets out Mr. Vandervelder's top hat and tails if he's not done it already. Shall I let him know about young William?
He already knows. Leave him be. He's seen many a footman come and go over the years. One more won't trouble him much. Now, I will want my matching blue satin gloves from this evening.
Which show are you seeing, Mrs.?
It's an opera, not a show, Siobhan. Didn't your last family subscribe?
Mr. Betts felt music dulled the mind. He preferred to drink.
Doorbell.
See who it is, then attend to the rest. I imagine it's our guest, Mr. Soper. If so, bring the tea right away, and be sure to check on us in 10 minutes or so. If the man is a bore, I will want some reason to leave.
The clock chimes 4 o'clock. George Soper enters.
Yes, Mr. Soper, please do sit down. How kind of you to visit.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Vanderveller. Mrs. Hurst's description doesn't do you justice.
Oh, you're very kind. You've just come from them, I take it.
Yes, madam. They're thinking of doing a new feature about me.
I see. How fascinating.
Yes. Is your husband at home?
My husband? No, I'm afraid that Mr. Vanderbilt won't be back from the club for some time. I've deprived him of his usual evening there, so I had to allow him the afternoon. My company will have to do.
Oh, now I fear I have offended, madam. I had thought you had invited me on behalf of your husband. I beg your pardon. I am not much one at small talk, but I will endeavor to do my best. The, curtains are lovely.
How do you take your tea, Mr. Soper?
Milk and honey, if you please.
How does your family?
Oh, my wife is quite well, thank you.
Any children?
2 sons, George Jr. and Harvey.
What a blessing. Now, I'm sure you're wondering why I brought you here. As you may know from my husband, I sit on the board of the American Medical Association as well as that of the New York Downtown Hospital. I understand that you met my husband at our annual gala. Yes, so I advise them on affairs pertaining to ladies' health, and I make recommendations about our lecture series. Mr. Vanderveller spoke very highly of you of your recent article in the journal, so I thought I might speak to you myself.
Of course. How may I assist you? Do you require an investigation?
Oh, how astute you are, Mr. Soper. Yes, my husband has made inquiries and intends to purchase property in Oyster Bay. He was told that you were a man to see regarding home inspectors. He told me that you were intimately familiar with the area.
Yes, madam, he spoke correctly. I did the Warren investigation myself.
Truly.
Yes, such a sad business. Lives needlessly lost, but I made sure that the culprit, a Mrs. Mary Mallon, was taken into custody.
Yeah, I read all about that in the newspaper. But what I can't understand is how she made people sick. By some accounts, she emitted some sort of vapors that lingered in the homes that she visited. But others say it's far more scientific than that.
Indeed, it's quite fascinating, actually. You see, we have discovered that most infectious disease can be traced to something so small that the eye cannot detect it. It's called bacteria, or in the case of typhoid, Salmonella typhi, to be precise.
How dreadful. But if it's invisible, how do you stop it from making people sick?
Fortunately, we have laboratory testing that can identify those who are ill, even so-called healthy carriers, like in the Mallon case.
But surely only those with the disease can pass it along to others, no?
When I first investigated the Warren household, the cause of the typhoid fever attack in Oyster Bay was quite uncertain. We thought it might be a bad bit of shellfish. It was only after a careful re-examination of the facts that I determined a healthy carrier might be present. You see, a healthy carrier is someone who presents none of the symptoms of the disease, but who carries the bacteria secretly inside their body. Only a laboratory test of their blood, feces, and urine can determine that they are in fact the cause of the outbreak.
How terrible, and yet how clever of you. I read in the newspaper that you confronted Mrs. Mallon several times.
Yes, she proved to be quite intractable, Irish. She did not believe that she was ill. I explained time and again that her personal hygiene habits were simply not respectable, that she was making people ill even though she was not ill herself. I needed only her urine, feces, and blood to make the truth plain to her, but she continued to cook. Those poor families. The infections continued and others died while she refused to submit to testing.
But how did you persuade her?
Finally, I convinced the health commissioner to involve the police. They took her into custody and compelled her testing.
Simply for being sick?
No, Mrs. Vanderveller. Mrs. Mallon had a full hearing before the Department of Health supported by laboratory testing. Since the cholera and influenza pandemics of the last century, the City of New York Department of Health has been granted extensive powers to quarantine and isolate those who prove to be infected.
But surely to isolate a woman of otherwise good health for the rest of her life is contrary to the public good.
Sadly, Dr. Porter agreed with that sentiment, and Mrs. Mallon was released following a personal hygiene education program. But she is still a healthy carrier of typhoid fever, and as such, in my opinion, will always represent a risk to the public health while she is allowed to roam free.
You mean there's no cure?
Not at this time, and she resisted most of our experiments to find one. To think of the good she could have done. We might have discovered a cure if she had cooperated and followed my advice by giving us her spleen, but she was too stubborn to see the right of things.
Poor woman. I can't imagine she would find much employment now, what with no cure and her infamy.
Madam, you will excuse me, but I feel more sympathy for those who are sure to be infected, as she has now refused to report to the Department of Health for further testing, breaking the terms of her parole. She complained previously that the work of a laundress was too difficult for her hands.
But surely she cannot still be contagious. It's been several years.
Madam, a healthy carrier is a healthy carrier. One's body does not simply cease creating the bacteria that causes an attack. Once a person becomes infected, the deadly disease inhabits their body until the moment of their last breath.
Truly, she sounds dangerous.
Indeed. I told the board that it was a deadly mistake to release her, but they refused my advice. If she cooks again, and I believe it is only a question of when, the woman is quite stubborn. Typhoid attacks are sure to follow. It is only a matter of time before more deaths are laid at her feet.
If she's such a danger, should we not all be taking precautions? I mean, what do we need to do here?
I'm afraid I have alarmed you unnecessarily, madam. While she represents quite a danger, she poses no threat to you or your household unless you are to unwittingly employ her yourself. Rest assured I am on the case and intend to bring her to justice once and for all.
Do you know her whereabouts?
Not entirely, but just between the two of us, and this will be kept out of the journal. We have a promising lead. There's been a rumor that she's living under an assumed name on the Lower East Side as Mrs. Mary Brown. A woman of her size and description cannot elude detection forever, not where Salmonella typhi abounds.
Clock chimes 4:30.
Mrs., you asked me to remind you when it was 1/2
Oh, yes. How time flies when one's engaged in such fascinating conversation. I'm afraid I must take leave of you, Mr. Soper. We have the opera this evening. Caruso, I'm sure you understand.
Of course, Mrs. Vanderbilt. We can make the arrangements for the inspection via post. Just send the address of your Oyster Bay house to my assistant.
Oh, you're very kind. Yes, my husband is eager to get things settled there before the first frost sets in. My sister intends to join us from Albany to sample the first of the soft clams next season.
Of course. I'll tell my assistant to make it a priority case. I bid you good evening. Enjoy the opera, and please give my best to your husband.
Yes, of course. Goodbye, Mr. Soper. Our maid will see you out. I'm afraid our footman is indisposed.
Did I interrupt you at the right time, Mrs.?
How terribly insightful.
There's a letter from your sister. Will he be able to help, Mrs.?
Indispensable, really. Bring back Mr. Brannigan. Is that everything then?
Yes, Mrs.
I'm sorry, William. We'd hoped that you'd be with us for a long time, but this type of behavior can simply not be tolerated. I've told the staff that you've left us to care for your ailing grandfather. I provide you with a good letter of reference and 2 weeks severance.
Yes, Mrs.
Bye, William, and good luck to you. It should go without saying that I will not be seeing you at or near this house again, and you should make no further contact with Mr. Samuels. I will not have this household further disturbed by having to replace a footman and a butler in the same fortnight, if you take my meaning. You will leave service today and spare us even the whiff of impropriety. Wait, I may have a prospect of some modest employment while you look for a permanent position.
What kind of employment?
I need you to find the woman described in this note. When you find her, I will pay you 2 months' wages. Do not use my name. She's one of your people. She needs help, but she's very proud. Once you find her, send word to me here.
I'm no investigator, Mrs. And with all due respect, not all of my people know each other. I already know a house that will have me.
No, Mr. Brannigan, you are a man very much in need of a place, and if you do this for me, I promise that I will find one for you. If you do not, I will inform your next house and every house thereafter that you were dismissed in disgrace. Then you will have no place at all. I don't see that you have any choice. Well then, it's settled. You will do this for me and I will find you a permanent position as a clerk. It's a perfect arrangement.
Yes, Mrs.
You may leave. Ah, Virginia. The timing of your request couldn't be more perfect.
Thank you. That is Act 1 of Brunch with Typhoid Mary.